Welcome to part 5 of our Canadian adventure. In this episode, we leave Prince Edward Island and start to explore the wonderful province of Nova Scotia. Our journey to Nova Scotia starts with a drive from Charlottetown to Wood Islands to catch the Northumberland ferry.
Good morning.
Good morning. So we've just driven I don't know what it was, 40 kilometres, something like that, from Charlottetown on Prince Edward Island. We've arrived at the Wood Islands ferry terminal. So from here we're going to catch a ferry across to Nova Scotia and land at a place called Caribou before continuing the journey to Antigonish, which is our stop for tonight.
And it's such a beautiful day again, and the sea is dead calm, which I'm dead pleased for.
Sorry?
The sea is dead calm, so I am really pleased.
Well done. As we were crossing the Northumberland Strait on our way to Nova Scotia, we saw the sister ferry coming in the other direction. A fellow passenger explained that the small craft following the ferry were actually the military. They were carrying out an exercise, assuming that the other ferry had been hijacked. Our ferry crossing took about an hour and 15 minutes, and it wasn't long before we were pulling in to the port of Caribou in Nova Scotia. That night we were staying in Antigonish, but en route we decided to take a short detour to the beautiful Cape George. The coast road was a fabulous drive, but the site that met us at Cape George was even better. A lighthouse was first built on this site in 1861. The current lighthouse, which was built in 1968, making it younger than me, is 45 feet or 13.7 meters high. It stands on this really pretty wooded bluff overlooking Ballantyne Cove and is a total of 404 feet or 123 meters above sea level. It's octagonal in shape and is built of reinforced concrete. We would discover on the rest of our trip that this look is very typical of Canadian East Coast lighthouses. Fully satisfied that we knew all there was to know about the Cape George Lighthouse, we jumped back in the car and took this coast road down to Antigonish and our hotel for the night. I should say Antigonish, apologies. Antigonish is a very small town with a population of only 5,000 living within the town itself. Many Canadians may have heard of it because it is the site of St. Francis Xavier University. Once a Catholic seminary, St. Francis became a university in the 19th century. Its alumni includes the English actor Larry Lamb, who studied here and even worked in Canada before becoming an actor. Was it the academic excellence of SFX that drew him to Antigonish, or the poutine and lovely beer? The next morning we set off for Cape Breton. To get to the island of Cape Breton, you have to cross the Canso Causeway. Our journey then took us to the south of the Brador Lake before reaching Sydney and turning right for Louisbourg.
I think you mean Brador Lake. Apologies for his pronunciation.
One major tourist attraction on Cape Breton is the Cabot Trail. The trail, which is 298 kilometres long, starts just north of Sydney and goes along the coastal road around the Cape Breton Highlands National Park, finishing just north of the Brador Lake. John Cabot was an Italian explorer and navigator who, commissioned by Henry VII of England in 1497, landed the Matthew on the east coast of Newfoundland. There is still some debate about exactly where he landed, and it may well have been Cape Breton or even the east coast of what is now the USA. Wherever John Cabot and his crew made landfall on the other side of the Atlantic, what is not in doubt is that his crew and the Matthew came from Bristol. So in North America we have a beautiful wooded trail named after him. In Bristol, it's a shopping centre. Unfortunately, Pip and I would not have time to explore the Cabot Trail on this trip, maybe in the future. The fortress at Louisbourg is named after King Louis XIV, and construction started by the French in 1713. It was an impressive structure. However, it had one fundamental flaw. It was designed mainly to defend against sea attack. It was very isolated, it was built on very low ground and surrounded by higher ground, and consequently it was easily sieged. The British successfully sieged the town on two separate occasions. In the second of these, in 1758, Louisbourg became an important staging point for the later siege of Quebec City and the Battle of the Plains of Abraham. In the early 1960s, there was very little on this site, and a very hard-working group of archaeologists and historians are responsible for what we now see today. Not only are the buildings really authentic, but just like King's Landing, there are actors playing out the role of the inhabitants.
And it's to register speed and direction of your vessel. So the direction, of course, you take with your compass, and your speed you take with a log line. So you put this in the water, and then you hold this, the reel, for 30 seconds, and as the boat moves forward, the reel unwinds, and you have knots. The faster the boat moves forward, the more knots are released.
Hence the phrase, knots. Yeah,
exactly.
Okay.
So the sailor would say, okay, we're going at 3 knots, and let's say we're heading due east. And then 30 minutes later, because each 30 minutes this would be taken. So 30 minutes later, let's say we are going a bit faster, 5 knots. And maybe we're going northeast this time. Let's say, where's northeast? Right there. But because it's a second reading, you would go in a second concentric circle.
Oh, okay.
So you would know which one corresponds to which. And the third reading would be on your third concentric circle, and so on and so forth. So after 4 hours, you'd have 8 readings of speed and direction. Your captain or your navigator would come and take this information, write it in the logbook, reset this to 0, right, for the next shift. Because a shift is sailor shift is 4 hours on, 4 hours off. This and there's the hairlines here would cast a shadow. When the shadow meets with the horizon and the window, it indicates your latitude here.
These are latrines, and they have been positioned right at the end of the headland. And if you come in and have a look, you'll see that below
Oh wow.
are some rather unfortunate rocks.
Yeah. Wouldn't have to flush though, would you?
No.
And what a nice view while you sat here.
If you were facing the wrong way. The King's Bastion was one of the main buildings on the site originally, housing barracks, sleeping accommodation for the commander, and also the chapel.
Barrier for these two people who are just coming in. He's the third highest ranking person here. I want to welcome you to my home. The kitchen, it's not only where I work, it's where I live, is the kitchen. And what's got everybody's attention is what we call our spit jack there. So basically, it works by winding up the stone at the back, right? We wind it up to the top. This is called the governor. The governor controls how fast the stone is dropping. So now the rope is pulling the gears the cog, the chain, and then the spit.
Wow.
Yes.
My children. So I come here and I follow my boss's instructions, the main engineer. If you were the number one engineer, you had the privilege of living here rent-free, your firewood was paid for, your food was paid for, your kitchen staff was paid for, and you had an entertaining budget to pay musicians to play the harpsichord, violins, wine, cognac, dancing for important people that are visiting today.
The clock located on the King's Bastion at the fortress was originally the clock on two village churches. It comes from France and it predates the revolution. The clock only shows an hour hand, but that was more than adequate for the company to work out when their duty started and finished.
Are you made out of wood? Yeah, you can pick one up if you'd like. They're like a low-class working shoe, right? So wear it when you do construction work, working on the walls, working on the fortifications.
Oh, it's very light.
It is quite light.
Unfortunately, the wind stops the audio on this clip being discernible. As this man goes about his business, I stop him and ask him what he's up to and what his role is in the fort. He explains that normally he's an artilleryman, used to being behind one of the larger guns, but today he's on guard duty and he's off to guard the commander's accommodation.
What have you got there?
Oh, you videoing? This is a drinking jug, we'll say, and here's my pewter spoon. We're about to have a authentic 18th century French lunch.
Bowl of soup.
A bowl of soup. Bowl of soup.
Jar of water. Some king's bread on my pewter plate.
I don't know who this king is, but
All very authentic.
I think he should sack his cook.
Sack his cook. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Wasn't sure quite what you said then. Thank you.
You're welcome. And these pewter bowls are very, very hot, so just be careful if you end up touching it.
I will.
Enjoy,
Thank you
guys.
very much.
Thank you. Yum, yum. Unfortunately, you've got a giant mouth to put your giant spoon.
I was just going to say, believe it or not, my mouth isn't big enough for this spoon. Once again, I've deleted the audio on this clip because the wind was horrendous. This is a hurdy-gurdy man who was taking his instrument apart to explain how it worked. By turning this handle, the wheel in the middle of the instrument vibrated the strings, and under this panel is a set of keys, which he then presses to change the tune. On the opposite side of the harbour stands Louisbourg Lighthouse. The current lighthouse was built in 1923, but it stands on the site of the very first lighthouse built in Canada. The lighthouse is positioned on Lighthouse Point and assists navigation into the harbour. It's positioned on high ground for fairly obvious reasons, and once it was captured in 1758 before the end of the siege, it made the ideal position for the British guns to bomb the fort across the harbour. After visiting the lighthouse, we said our goodbyes to Louisbourg and drove the short distance to our hotel in Sydney. The British founded Sydney in 1785, and it was named after Thomas Townshend, 1st Viscount Sydney, who was the Home Secretary at the time. The population of Sydney grew significantly in the early 20th century thanks to the opening of a major steelworks. This has subsequently closed, and today its main industries are call centres and tourism. Although it was a bit overcast the day that we visited, the waterfront was still really attractive. Sydney was a really important send-off point in the Second World War, with many merchant ships heading for the UK. A lot of these ships were lost to German U-boats, and this statue is designed to represent the many rescues that took place off this coast. Sydney was the first landing port in Canada for many immigrants, and this statue, called A Land of Our Own, celebrates that fact. It shows a newly landed father comforting his child as they anticipate what lies before them in the new land of Canada. The biggest statue was yet to come. How about a 60-foot, 8-ton fiddle? So here we are in Sydney.
Sydney by the sea.
Sydney by the sea, in Nova Scotia, not Australia, obviously not New South Wales. And behind us is the biggest fiddle on earth, apparently.
And that's saying something.
And that is saying something. The process of checking into our hotels doesn't normally feature in these vlogs, but in Sydney, the experience was unique. Despite this being a public available hotel, the first thing we had to do was remove our shoes, then work out the door technology. Finally, make no noise whatsoever. I think both Pip and I were pleased that it was only one night we were staying in Sydney, both from a hotel perspective and also a rather disappointing meal out. Still, it finished with a nice beer. See you next time.